study, worship. Glad we had a good week at the meeting. That was profitable, beneficial in a lot of ways. And thankful that Brother Ed and Sister Marilyn made it back home safely. We've missed some readings, and what I thought I would do, we go through, at least last night, through John, the 10th chapter. We were back in Luke last time we did any reviewing. I thought what I would do is just talk briefly about John and review John. John emphasizes what aspect of Jesus? His deity, or divinity, that's right. There's several things about John that you probably could read in various introductions to Bibles or overviews, surveys, some of which is helpful, some I question. Even among members of the church, in fact, some of my stuff early on, I would talk about, how John was a little different from the synoptic gospels. You hear that all the time, synoptics, to see together. So Matthew, Mark, and Luke are kind of to themselves, and then John is different. And the older I've grown, the less I think of that idea. There are differences in each of the gospel that are, for instance, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's commonly said, will deal with more of the shorter sayings of Jesus. What about Matthew 5, 6, and 7? That was kind of a long speech. And then John works more on, here's a miracle, and then there's a long discourse that follows the miracle based on the miracle. You think about John, the 5th chapter, John, the 6th chapter, the feeding of the 5,000, and then I'm the bread of life. John, the 8th chapter, talking about the idea of captivity, bondage to sin. In the 9, he healed the man born blind, and then at the end, they cast the man out of the synagogue. And so in chapter 10, I'm the door. I'm the way. I'm the way really to God. They might have cast you out of the door of the synagogue. I'm the way to God. And so all those things are seemingly different about John, but each of the accounts is different. Mark starts with, there's nothing in Mark about the birth and early life of Jesus. Very little in Matthew. Luke has the primary about. So each of the accounts is different. And so don't get caught up on the synoptics this and John that. Don't. It's easy to do. But there's a phrase used often in John, I am. It's used some 23 times. And sometimes the word I am, what is it, Lee? I may echo. I may echo. Sometimes it just has reference to, I am something else. But there are certain times it's used, 7 times it's used. I'm the bread of life. By the way, and all these phrases indicate Jesus' relationship to the world and to saving the world. I'm the bread of life. I provide for you spiritual life. I'm the light of the world in chapter 8. I'm the door of the sheep in chapter 10. I'm the good shepherd in chapter 10. At the resurrection of Lazarus, I am the resurrection and the life. In chapter 14, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And then in chapter 15, I am the true vine. And so all of those have specific references to the relationship that we can sustain to Jesus. And also in John, it's fascinating to me. In the first 12 chapters, you have 7 miracles, and over the process of about, 3.5 years. In 13 through 17, one place, the upper room. One place. 18 through 21, a few weeks. Death, burial, resurrection, ascent, and then appearances. Those are neat divisions. It's been stated that you have in the first 18 verses the incarnation or introduction of Jesus. In the beginning, y'all can quote all this. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. And so he's introduced as the Word, and then the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, verse 14. And so you have sometimes called, even in the American Standard, the prologue, logos, word, a log that you write down things in, and before. So before Christ came to earth, he was known as the Word, and who he would represent. The word means carrier of thought, and so Jesus is carrying the very thoughts of God to earth. Isn't that, it's so deep, and yet the words are so what? They're so simple. Lee, others who'd had second year Greek down at Florida College, when they would translate, but you guess what Bible book they translate first? John, because it had the simplest Greek vocabulary, and yet some of the deepest, most profound meanings. Anyway, we got all of that. And in the presentation of Jesus in 1 through 4, think about John's early disciples. John the Baptist is identified in his early disciples, and he points them to Jesus in 1. Chapter 2, Jesus goes up to Cana, where he turns water to wine. A quick trip to Capernaum, back to Jerusalem, where he cleanses the temple. That's the cleansing number 1. That's the first one. There's a second related in the last week. Chapter 3, he has a conversation with Nicodemus. He's still in Jerusalem. In chapter 4, the Pharisees understand he's making and baptizing more disciples, though he baptized not himself, his disciples did. So he goes northward to Samaria, and we have the conversation with the woman at the well. Chapter 5, he cures the fellow who what? What's that land? At the pool. At the pool of Bethesda. All right, and then 6, he feeds 5,000 men, excluding women and children, and then he goes over to Capernaum, walks on water, and then he goes to Capernaum, and he gives the great speech on I am the bread of life. Yeah, your fathers ate the manna, but I'm the true bread. And so you've got those contrasting ideas of the physical and the spiritual. Light, life are contrasted all through John. It's just such a wonderful, wonderful study. That's chapter 6. Chapter 7, we already come down to the Feast of Tabernacles, yes, which was in the fall of the year. And then in John 10, about 21, 22, it's the Feast of Lights, which is around what we call, Hanukkah, yeah. And so that's John 10, 21, 22. And so you have December, and then you have just a very short time until the spring of the year when Jesus would be crucified. So chapter 11, we have, that was 10. And then in 11, we have the resurrection of Lazarus. And that gets us past our readings, actually, for today. But anyway, you have in those this presentation in 1 through 4, and then opposition to Jesus, the Son of God, in 5 through 12. And it's interesting in 13 through 17 that he's only with whom? Just think. The Passover, the institution of the supper, he's only with whom? The apostles. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 5 chapters. 1 discussion with the apostles. And then 18 and 19, the trial and the crucifixion. 20, the resurrection. 21 appearances. And so, anyway, I love the study. I love the study of all Bible books, but John is just a very intriguing book. Comment or question, anybody?
Philip, what did you say the chapters 1 through 12, what was that time period?
What did I say? 1 through 12 would be the 7 miracles with a few years, and then 13 through 17 would be in the upper room, and then 18 through 21 a few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, another thing I didn't mention, and we did this more when we were studying the life of Jesus. Whereas Matthew, Mark, and Luke do emphasize more of Jesus' Galilean work, John emphasizes it down in Jerusalem and Judea. Just think JJ or JJJ, John, Judea, Jerusalem. And the others have mentioned that, but more divine ink is used in the Galilean ministry. All right. Comment, question? Okay, let's go right on in. We're in actually 1 Thessalonians, but we've been studying through, obviously, Acts, and we're putting the epistles chronologically in line. We want to remember those first 12 chapters, early chapters, primarily Peter among Jews, the church in Jerusalem, primarily Paul among Gentiles to the ends of the earth in 13 through 28. And our second journey has taken us, all three journeys begin from what city? Over in that far Antioch of Syria. Good. First journey primarily in southern Galatia and Isle of Cyprus. Second journey, which is where we are now, has taken us through Phrygia, Syria, and then Phrygia, Galatia, all the way to, go ahead and pick up our map. Picked up Timothy and Lystra, and who in Troas? Luke. And we come over to Philippi, chapter 16, with the conversion of the Philippian jailer, Lydia first in her house, and the Philippian jailer. And then Thessalonica. And then problems there with the Jews, stirring up problems against Paul into Berea, and then to Athens. But he's now Silas, he told the brethren at Berea, send Silas and Timothy to me with all speed. At some point, not recorded in Acts, but in 1 Thessalonians 3, one of those two come to it. Who is it? Timothy. All right? And so Paul arrives, concerned for the Thessalonians, leads Paul to send Timothy back to the Thessalonians and see how they're doing. Meantime, he goes where? Chapter 18 of Acts. To Corinth. Good. All right. Then, while Paul is there making tents, supporting himself, preaching in the synagogue, who comes to him from Macedonia? S&T. Silas and Timothy. They bring, based on other passages of the epistles, they bring support so he can do what? Preach, give himself entirely to the word. And they also bring a report of how things are going back in Thessalonica. So what happens is they bring a good report. Paul, they're doing well. They're persevering under severe persecution. And so Paul then, that's the occasion of Paul writing back this letter from Corinth to the Thessalonians. And we pointed out that the main message seems to be his thankfulness for their faithfulness within severe persecution. And they're to remain holy. That's a key idea. It was in his prayer in chapter 3. It is in chapter 4. This is the will of God, even your sanctification, that ye abstain from fornication. And so sanctification and coming to the Lord are key ideas. And we pointed out the first 3 chapters deal with the commendation of their faith and Paul's labors among them. We fill in the gaps of Acts based on a whole lot of what he says in 1 Thessalonians, really those first 3 chapters. And then 4 and 5 are more practical, more instructive in what it means to live holy lives in the light of Jesus' second coming. And here are chapter contents. He commended their faith, talked about his own preaching, his conduct and their conversion, how they accepted the word, not as the word of men, but as it is in truth, the word of God, which works in you that believe. And then I was so concerned about you. I decided to be left alone at Athens and sent Timothy. And then at the end of chapter 3, the prayer for them. And then the holiness is necessary and words of comfort relative to dead Christians. 5, which I'm thinking we'll get to and hopefully finish, he continues that idea that the day of the Lord is coming. You just don't know when. And then he ends it with various exhortations. We looked at how we can see several ideas that are referenced in the letter back to what's going on in Acts. And here in chapter 4, which is where we last were, the holiness of life is necessary, the warning against immorality. We talked about sanctification, what it involves, and then we're just going to go ahead, show the picture of, then showed what a chiasmus is, where There's an idea, another one, and then there's a going backwards until you come back to the same idea that you started with. And it's a kind of a memory device as well as emphasis. And we went over some of these little thought questions that we put together. And then we talked about the last paragraph, the words of comfort for dead Christians. And we talked about that you sorrow not as those who have no hope. And we believe that if Christ ascended, he'll come again. And the dead in Christ shall rise, shall not, we that are alive shall not precede those who are fallen asleep. And we looked at the word sleep here a couple of weeks ago. And sleep only, just think, sleep only refers to what? The spirit or the body? It's the body. It's the position of the body. It's not soul sleep, as some cults state. It's a metaphorical use of the word sleep. It's the similarity in appearance between a sleeping body and a dead body. And it's used throughout the New Testament. And the early Christians adopted this word coimitarian. You see cemetery for the place of departed spirits, the sleeping place of the dead. And this is the last slide that we actually used a week and a half ago. And Paul here found an affirmation of the intimate relation when he said, look at 1 Thessalonians 4:14. He says to those that are asleep, that they are going to enjoy the benefits of the resurrection, just like those of us who are alive. Verse 13, if we would not have you ignorant, brethren, concerning them that fall asleep, that you sorrow not even as the rest who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also that are fallen asleep in Jesus will God bring with him. It's not that they're already in heaven, Jesus is coming from heaven with them, but he's going to bring them, as mentioned here by McGarvey, with him does not here mean that Jesus will bring the disembodied spirits from heaven to the resurrection. But the God who brought Jesus from the grave will also bring from the grave in conjunction with Jesus all those who entered it with their lives spiritually united with it. That's the idea. If it's not true, and I couldn't help but think earlier this morning as reviewing all this, that there are so many people who think, it's just across the board, that when you die, if you're in a right relation with God, where are you? You're in heaven. You're in heaven looking down, and it is just not the truth. It's just that doesn't correspond to what the Bible says. In Luke 16, you have the rich man who lifted up his eyes in torments, in Hades, and then he saw Abraham afar off and who? Lazarus in his bosom. And there was this great gulf that separated between each other. None could go from one side to the other. And that corresponds with every other passage in the New Testament. In 2 Corinthians 5, verse 10, everybody in this room can quote that. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ to what? Receive the things done in the body according to what he hath done, whether it be good or bad. John 5, 28 and 29. Marvel not at this, that the day will come when all that are in the tomb shall hear his voice and shall come forth. They that have done good into everlasting life, they that have done evil into everlasting damnation. You've got the resurrection of the just and the unjust all at the same time. If it is true that once people die, they're in heaven, then that takes away the judgment of even the righteous. There won't be a judgment of the righteous. And so Paul is dealing with in 1 Thessalonians 4 are problems in understanding. If people died in Christ and they're faithful, but they're dead, and the Lord is going to come pretty soon, they must not be able to enjoy the benefits of the resurrection. That's the argument. And so Paul deals with that and says that we that are alive at his coming will in no wise precede those who are fallen asleep. Go ahead and read with me. Look at verse 16, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we that are alive, that are left, shall together with them be caught up in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. If you connect all this to 1 Corinthians 15, Paul said there in the last paragraph, the flesh and blood shall not inherit the kingdom of God. And he said, so there's got to be a change. And the change is that we who are here on earth that are left, when the Lord comes, will be changed. We'll be given what kind of a body? A spiritual body. And that's for both the righteous as well as the wicked. Yes, sir.
But we don't believe that those in Abraham's bosom are going to hell.
No, that's right.
We know that they're protected and saved.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
they're not in heaven.
But they're not going to Hades, or going rather to Gehenna. Yes, to the final abode of the wicked. Yeah, Gehenna.
A little complicated.
Did you say something?
I said it's a little complicated.
It is somewhat, yeah, and it is. Most people in the world have no clue about what we're talking about. But you've got three Greek words, just like the three words for heaven, or three ideas for heaven. You have Hades, the realm of disembodied spirits, where all of us, I believe, go once we die. But in Hades, you have, like Luke 16, Abraham's bosom, where Lazarus was, place of comfort and rest. But you also have where the rich man was, and that's torment. Now, Brother Gene mentioned something that I think that's how I believe the Bible teaches. 2 Peter 2, there's only one time it's used. 2 Peter 2, where he says the angels that sinned that were cast down into hell. That's not Gehenna, it's not Hades, it's Tartarus. It's a different Greek word. And it's the idea, I take it, of like a holding place for the wicked. And so you have the idea where Lazarus was as a place of comfort and peace, and then you have a place of torment. But then if you go a little farther, you have judgment. And like in Revelation 20, when John said, I saw the great standing before I saw everybody standing before the great white throne. And he that sat on the throne, from whose face the earth and heaven fled away, there was found no place for them. And the books were open, and another book was open, which is the book of life. And they were judged, every one out of the book. And so you have heaven, and then you have the lake that burns with fire and brimstone. And you have two different places that the righteous will go, as he describes in Revelation 21 and 2, and the wicked that will go into the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. And so the judgment is pictured. Here we are, we're alive. We got charts, but not on this. Here we are alive, and we die. I believe that once we die, we're going to know where our eternal destiny is. We're going to be lifting up our eyes in torment or in the comfort of Abraham's bosom. But judgment then will be for the purpose of basically explaining. Think Matthew 25. When the Lord pictures a judgment, the sheep are scattered. Not sheep are scattered. But sheep are divided from the goats. And to the righteous on his right hand, he'll say, come ye blessed of my Father, and inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was sick, and you what? Visited me. I was hungry, you gave me thirsty, and you gave me. Well, when did we see you this way? And the Lord said, as you did it to the least of these my brethren, you did it unto me. Then to those on his left hand, he'll say what? Depart from me, ye cursed, into eternal fire, which is prepared for the devil. For I was hungry, and you gave me not to eat. Thirsty, and you gave me not to drink. So all those things. Well, when did we see you then? Well, as you did it not to the one of these least my brethren, you did it not unto me. These will go away into everlasting life, but the wicked into everlasting punishment. So you have those pictures That here we know what our eternal destiny is going to be in Hades. And we'll either suffer torment, or we'll be in a blessed state. But then when judgment comes, and all of those in Hades, the disembodied spirits, will be reunited with their spirit, or I say reunited, they'll be given a spiritual body, and then the Lord will pronounce judgment, and there will be basically an explanation why you're going to be saved, why you're going to be lost. And so you have Hades as the realm of disembodied spirits, Tartarus as the place where consignment for the wicked, and then Gehenna, which is what Jesus talked about in Matthew 5, final destination of the wicked. And sometimes all three are translated hell in the King James. You want to say
So
something?
there's that point when every knee bows and every tongue confesses.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think that'd be judgment. It'd be judgment. Okay, yes, ma'am.
But at the point of death, at the point of our physical death, our spiritual fate is sealed.
Yes. Yeah,
There's no change.
there's no change. After Hebrews 9:27, it's appointed men once to die, and after this judgment. That doesn't mean immediately then, but it's after that. And so you're judged. And in Luke 16, he says, hey, I've got 5 brethren. Don't tell. There's no movement back and forth. Once we die, that's it. And hence all the passages that deal with the necessity for us to move now. Now is the accepted day. Today is the day of salvation, 2 Corinthians 6. All those passages indicate the need to be urgent about being right with God. Did you have something else you were... In Kay, you looked like you wanted to say something. Okay.
No, okay. At what point does that judgment occur whether you're in Abraham's bosom or?
Yeah, at the end of time.
I mean, once you die, now you said some of them's in Abraham's bosom.
Yeah.
Some of them's like the rich man.
Mm-hmm.
When does that judgment take place?
I don't know if it's a judgment. It's just you're assigned to those.
Somebody's got to say, okay, you good, you bad.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the line that has to occur.
Well, I think, I don't know of a passage that deals with the judgment for that. But what I do know is that the judgment is always pictured at the last day. There's a phrase in John that's mentioned several times, at the last day. John 6:44 and 5. No man comes to me except the Father that sent me draw him, and I will raise him up in the last day. John 12:48. He that rejected me receiveth not my teaching, hath one that judgeth him. The word that I speak, the same shall judge him in the last day. And so we'll be raised at the last day. We'll be judged at the last day. That is a physical, that will be given a spiritual body. The last day will be judged at the last day. Anything prior to that, I think we know. Like Lazarus and the rich man, they knew where they were. One quick thing, brother. I'm sorry.
But who consigned them there?
Well, the Lord would, but I don't think it would be an explanation of judgment. What I see your hand, Brother Gene. Turn over real quickly. There are passages throughout the New Testament. Turn over to Jude. I think Jude is one of these passages that kind of gives us a reason for judgment. As well as Matthew 25 that I was trying to quote a while ago. He says, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you why you're saved. I'm going to tell you why you're lost. But notice in verse, he starts talking about how to beware of false teachers, 12, 13. These are those who are hidden rocks in your love feast. Shepherds without fear feed themselves, clouds without water, autumn trees without fruit, twice dead. Verse 13, wild waves of the sea, foaming out of their shame, wandering stars for whom the blackness of darkness has been reserved forever. That is, all these people you need to beware of. And to these also, Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, behold, the Lord came with 10,000 of his holy ones, or your translation may say his holy myriads, to execute judgment upon all, and to convict all the ungodly of all their works of ungodliness which they have ungodly wrought, and of all the hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against it. You notice what he says there in the early part of 15. To execute judgment, to convict all the ungodly of their works. To convict anyone is to present evidence, overwhelming evidence. Like we talk about someone was convicted. He's a convict. He's convicted of crimes being committed. The evidence is brought forth, and he's given a reason why. And this passage, I think, is pretty powerful as to show the purpose of judgment. It's to convict, as Brother Gene quoted a while ago in Philippians 2, that every knee shall bow, things in heaven, things on earth, things under the, every tongue shall confess that Jesus is Christ, to the glory of the Lord, to the glory of God the Father. And so it looks like that's the idea. Brother Gene, you wanted to say something a minute ago.
Let me think a second. The rich man saw Abraham and he saw Lazarus, but it doesn't mention Lazarus having any knowledge
Of him.
of him.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true.
I think in this place of comfort, it would be uncomfortable for people there to be seeing what's going on.
Seeing what? So, yes. Yeah, that's a great point. I have thought about this. How, there in 2 Peter 2, he says, he said it's better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than to have known it and gone away. How in the world could it be better for some who are lost than for others who are lost? Those who have never known the way of righteousness is bad, but it's worse for those who've known it and gone away from it. And I think what Brother Gene said maybe touches on that idea, that for us to be able to know for all the ages of eternity, if that's a poor way of expressing it, for all of eternity, we can say to ourselves, it didn't have to be this way. And if we could see those up there with Lazarus and Abraham and all those, I could be with them if I hadn't been so rebellious and stubborn. And you talk about the self-guilt, or guilt brought on yourself but because you knew better and yet you went away from it. I think that is one of the most difficult things, terrible things to think about, that can make hell even worse for people who knew better and went away from it than those who never knew. The Bible teaches those who don't know God and have never obeyed the gospel are going to be lost, 2 Thessalonians 1. But then to know it and go away from it, it just makes it even worse. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, somebody else have a David? Did you look like I saw a hand up out there?
You asked the question.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Randy, you think? Seriously, you wanted to say something? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Lazarus did look up and see the rich man. The rich man looked up and saw Lazarus and Abraham's bosom. But when you're in eternal paradise, heaven with God, you don't look back and see the other way.
You don't look back and see what?
I'm asking, like, you don't look back and see loved ones or those who didn't make it.
No. I don't think so. Sometimes I've used a passage in Ecclesiastes where he says,
If you could, it would not be total bliss and happiness.
no, I think that's right. In Ecclesiastes, where is it? It's the 9th chapter. The 9th chapter, there's a phrase in Ecclesiastes, under the sun, things that happen in this life. And in verse, he's talking about, while we have life, there's hope. Even, he talks about a dead dog, or, a dog in, what's that word? Yeah, for the living know that they shall, verse 5, for the living know that they shall die. But the dead know not anything, neither have they any more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Some of the witnesses take the view, say they're just out of existence. Their soul sleep. That's not the point. Keep reading. As well as their love, their hatred, their envy has perished long ago. Neither have they any more a portion forever in anything that is done under the sun. Well, so he says here in verse 5, the living know they shall die, but the dead know not anything. They don't know anything what or where. What's going on under the sun. They don't know what's going on under the sun. They know what's going on where they are, but they don't know what's going on under the sun. And that's why it's just like, here Lazarus died and was buried. The rich man died and by the angels was taken to Abraham's bosom, Luke 16. And so here the rich man died, but he lifted up his eyes in torment. So his body was in the grave, but his spirit was actually in torment. Well, he doesn't know. He remember about his 5 brethren, and he did. And he said, send somebody back to them that they not come to this place. But he could remember them, but he didn't see them. And it's no evidence that Lazarus and Abraham were seeing anybody on earth. They know what they're doing and where they are, but they don't know what's going on elsewhere. They have no memory under the sun, or that they know not anything under the sun. Does that help some?
Philip, it's like in Revelation when we talk about you having your no pain, no sorrow, no grieving.
Yeah.
We'll be so enamored with being with God, nothing else is gonna matter.
Yeah, I think you're right. I know you're right. When I was in my 20s, I was living in Dallas, Texas. Before Lee and I married, and there was a young man a few years younger than I was. And he said, Philip, have you ever thought about the idea of heaven and the fact that after we're there for a while, would we get tired? And I'd not really thought about that question at the time. I've thought about it a lot of times since then. Well, what's the easy answer for that? No, the easy answer is no. We won't get tired, because tiredness, and I didn't think to answer it this simply at the time. Tiredness is associated with what? Our physical bodies. And so when we're given a spirit,
Patty said that time also, it's time will be gone.
that's right. There will be we get tired after a few hours of anything, and there's no time, and that just staggers the imagination, doesn't it? That before the beginning was, God is. Not God was, but God is. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. John 1. And then Genesis 1, in the beginning God created. In the beginning God already was. And you start thinking, but the beginning is all about the T word, time. And we're regulated by that with the turning of the earth on its axis and all of those things. And all those are physical. You talk about thinking outside the box. You really do when you start thinking in terms of that. But I think that's the quick answer to what you said a while ago. Anybody else?
Just taking the time to consider such things just increases our faith and builds such hope. I believe that's why the Bible says, take time to meditate on these things now.
Yeah.
Think about, we're so busy and caught up in the world, even if it's good things.
Yes.
But when we do stop and take that time to meditate and dwell on that, sometime, at different times.
Yeah.
It's just so helpful as a Christian to increase your faith and to be faith and want to get there and want to be there and desire to be in the presence of the Lord, and it's just helpful now and then it'll just be blissful.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I couldn't have said it better, Patty. That's exactly right. Unfortunately, a lot of Christians don't think about it that. It's just, let's get to the next point, do this and that, and they don't think past what we're talking about. We've got to have some understanding of what the Bible teaches on these subjects. And then we've got to kind of think, again, it staggers my imagination when you start thinking in terms of eternity, because we are so bound by time and physical things and our lifespans, and all I know about that happened before I can remember is what people have either told me or I've read. Nobody can remember anything past the time you were, well, but here you have God and expressing things that are before us and that will come. I mean, I can't, the only way I can know things happen back during the time that the Lord describes it is faith. That's the only way. You can't see it. Nobody recorded things that happened. You just take it by faith. Similarly, in things to come, you can't appreciate it except by the eye of faith. I came across a quote years ago, and I used it a lot in Hebrews 11, but in other places, that faith gives to things past and things future all of the reality of present existence. Faith gives to things past and things future all the reality of present existence. I think that holds water.
The evidence of things hoped for.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
Substance.
Substance of things not seen. Faith, Romans 8, faith ends in sight. Romans 8, 25 and 6. And it's kind of like in 1 Corinthians 12, now abides these three, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love, because eventually faith will be caught up in sight. Faith and then hope, the object of our hope, will be realized, but what continues on is love. Comment, question, anybody?
You know, Paul addressed that in 1 Corinthians 15. He says, some will ask.
Yes. What manner of body shall?
That's not an unusual question for
Right.
a person to think about.
That's right.
And Paul said it was foolishness. Not knowing the things of God, you're going to get a super body.
That's right. Yes.
Don't get tired.
Won't get tired, and it will be, the 1 Corinthians 15, I think it's 35. Are you looking at it? But it's 35 or 36.
Someone will
That-
say, how are the dead raised, and
With
with what manner of body do they come?
Yes, that question, and then Paul's answer, he said, you foolish one, that which is sown like a grain of wheat is not what is going to come up. The wheat seed, or the germination principles, you put it in the ground, and when it comes forth, the body that comes forth does not look anything like the seed. Was there ever a cessation of existence? No, but a change of what? Change of form. And you talk again about thinking outside the box. Here our bodies are sown, we're cremated. They're dust particles that can be buried at sea and scattered to the... And yet somehow God is going to transform that body and make a spiritual body that will be sufficient to clothe our spirits, in which they will dwell either in heaven or hell. So best I can do.
Well, our spiritual bodies, from what I can tell, will be similar to what we have now, as we recognize in the transfiguration.
Moses and Elijah. Yeah, I've thought about that too. Thought about what kind of language they'll sing in heaven. Whatever it is, we can understand it. There's so many questions. I know we've shot our time, but it's been profitable, I think. People raise the question. I remember hearing an older preacher years ago. He's been dead now since the 80s. But he made the point that he knew of a congregation out in Texas, pretty much divided over the case of will we recognize our loved ones in heaven? And it ended up part of the congregation that believed you would sit on one side, and part that you would not sit on the other. And and then they have arguments on both sides. If it's heaven and some of my loved ones are not there, how could it be heaven and I know about it and I know that they're not there? And then others, well, if they're not with me, or they're with me and I can't enjoy their presence, how will that be? Maybe I'm a child, have childlike thinking on some of this, but I think from Revelation 21 and 22 that God won't have any problems clearing all those difficulties that we imagine up. I just don't see it. There'll be, somebody quoted a while ago, Revelation 21, 3, 4, and 5. There'll be no pain, no sorrow, no crying anymore, no death. All those things will be. So things that are significant to our physical existence will be over.
Our feeble minds try to put limits on God, and we
Yeah.
have to do that.
There again, we made God out of our image.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I told Jonathan to put 1 Thessalonians 5. And, but you know what? I don't apologize. If we are able to get closer to the Lord and understand a little bit more of His Word and how that fits, it's always profitable. I will say this. Let's answer this and stop. 1 through 8 instruct us to be sanctified as it relates to morals, sanctification. If we go through life living the kind of life the Lord teaches, what do you think the Lord will cause between us and those who do not follow the Lord's teaching? I didn't come to send peace, but a sword. That there's what? A division. Habits are formed early in life and carry on through life. 11 and 12 teach us in so many words to mind our own business and work hard. What habits can young people get in which are just the opposite of these instructions? They can get what? They can be what? Lazy. And they can be involved in everybody else's business, aka Facebook, Instagram, a lot of other stuff. Also, is this an extension or application of something Jesus taught during His ministry? Peter looked back and saw John. What's going to happen to John? And Jesus said, you need to worry about me. Follow me. What is that to you? Though it is certainly right to be sad when people who are Christians die, they sorrow most for the fact that they would see His face no more. The Ephesians elders there with Paul. What do we learn in this chapter that should give us comfort? That what's going to happen in 1 Thessalonians 4? We'll be raised. Now, go back to where I've been kind of had a common denominator here the last several weeks. Did Jesus actually address this subject, the resurrection, during His ministry? I quoted that a while ago. Marvel not at this. Those that are in the tombs will hear His voice shall come forth. They that have done good to the resurrection of life, they that have done evil to the resurrection. Jesus taught about the resurrection, and that both the righteous as well as the unrighteous who are in the tombs will be raised. So they just didn't understand that. There again, there's a teaching of Jesus, but there's more application and extension of what Jesus, what the truth of the matter is. Hence, John 16:13, and He shall guide you into all the truth. All the truth. Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right, let's stop there. Pick up 1 Thessalonians 5 next.